Albert Einstein described himself. In 10 years, Einstein went from high school dropout to formulator of the theory of relativity. How? Why? What can we learn from his career about our most precious resource, the human mind? I believe that one of the strongest motives that lead men to art and science is flight from everyday life with its painful harshness and wretched dreariness. One who is more finely tempered is driven to escape from personal existence to the world of objective observing and understanding. This motive can be compared with the longing that irresistibly pulls the city dweller away from his noisy, cramped quarters towards the silent, high mountains. Man tries to make for himself, in the fashion that suits his taste, a simplified and intelligible picture of the world. He then tries, to some extent, to substitute this cosmos of his for the world of experience, and thus to transcend it. This is what the painter, the poet, the philosopher, and the natural scientist do, each in his own way. Albert Einstein's discoveries in physics ranged from the molecular to the universal. His formative years, the years of his unequaled creativity, were spent here in Switzerland. In his education and his character may be revealed answers to the riddle of all genius. Einstein submitted only 14 lines in response to a biographical request from Einstein. That modest summary conceals one of the greatest adventures in human thought. He was born in Ulm, Germany, on March 14, 1879. Spent his childhood in Ulm and Munich. Went to college in Zurich. After graduation, he became a patent examiner in Bern. Astonished the world with a series of discoveries that transformed physics, honored by the Sorbonne and by the He returned to his native Germany only to be driven out by the Nazis with other intellectuals like Thomas Mann. He settled in Princeton, New Jersey, and became a life member of the Institute for Advanced Study. His findings in relativity led other scientists to manufacture the first atomic bomb. But Einstein had no part in the making of the bomb, urged nations to renounce it as a weapon of war. Einstein spent his last years at the Institute seeking to develop a unified field theory that would integrate all natural phenomena. He was 76 when he died on April 18, 1955. He asked that there be no ceremony, no shrine. Einstein's achievements have been enshrined in memory and time. To trace the nurturing of his genius, one must go back to 1895. In the late summer of that year, a troubled but determined young man of 16 arrived in Zurich. Albert Einstein had fled without a diploma from the rote learning of an authoritarian secondary school in Munich. Einstein came to Zurich to apply. As Einstein explained it
followed from the special theory of relativity that mass and energy are but different manifestations of the same thing, a somewhat unfamiliar conception for the average mind. Furthermore, the equation E is equal mc squared, in which energy is equal to mass multiplied with the square of the velocity of light, showed that very small amount of mass may be converted into a very large amount of energy, and vice versa. The mass and energy were in fact equivalent, according to the formula mentioned above. This was demonstrated by T.Krier and Walton in 1932 experimentally.
Einstein was happy in Switzerland. There, man is left to himself and his privacy is respected. That privacy was lost irrevocably after the First World War. The name Einstein became a household word, a symbol of man's yearning to salvation through science. His overriding concern was that man learned to control the forces science had unleashed.
To give any estimate of when atomic energy can be applied to constructive purpose is impossible. What now is known is only how to use a fairly large quantity of uranium. The use of quantities sufficiently small to operate, say, in a car or an airplane is as yet impossible. Presumably, all materials which may be used for such purposes will be among the heavier elements of high atomic weight. Those elements are relatively scarce because of their lesser stability. So, though the release of atomic energy can be, and no doubt will be, a great boon to mankind, that may not be for some time.
Despite his renown to make a science of our century, remained simple and unassuming in his person. The secret of Einstein's genius may well lie in his simplicity, his childlike curiosity, his complete concentration, his playful visual imagination, and his openness to the symmetry of nature. But there is something else. The human intellect is a delicate flower, said Albert Einstein. His career reveals how we must nurture the mind to help liberate man from dogma and deception. I am one small piece of nature.
Infinite Pond. Vietnam War Memorial. Monument to Albert Einstein. National Academy of Sciences, Philip Handler.
There's a lot of money in film, and it's good for children. All right, beginning there.
It was an authentic truth.
And I'm going now. There's a lot of money in film, and it's good for children. All right, beginning there.
It was an authentic truth.
And I'm going now.
I am one small piece of nature. So Albert Einstein described himself. In 10 years, Einstein went from high school dropouts to formulator of the theory of relativity. How? Why? What can we learn from his career about our most precious resource, the human mind?
The idea of achieving security through national armament is, at the present state of military technique, a disastrous illusion. The hydrogen bomb appears on the public horizon as a probably attainable goal. Its accelerated development has been solemnly proclaimed by the President. If successful, radioactive poisoning of the atmosphere and hence annihilation of any life on Earth has been brought within the range of technical possibilities.
That was an exclusive statement which Professor Einstein made for the NBC cameras 5 years ago, in which he warned that the products of his genius, atomic bombs, were a menace to mankind. The professor often left the scientific world to speak on moral and political issues, especially those posed by atomic energy.
Is there any way out of this impasse created by man himself? All of us, and particularly those who are responsible for the attitude of the US and the USSR, should realize that we may have vanquished an external enemy, but have been incapable of getting rid of the mentality created by war. It is impossible to achieve peace as long as every single action is taken with a possible future conflict in view.
This is the formula which summarized Einstein's theory of relativity, a theory which gained him a Nobel Prize. Einstein took mass, or the atomic weight of a substance, and the speed of light, which is constant, and expressed their relation to energy in a simple equation. E equals mc squared.
Another formula proposed by Dr. Einstein with a twinkle in his eye involves success in life. The rule, he would say, might be expressed as follows. Success equals x plus y plus z. X being work, y being play, and z keeping your mouth shut.
There's a lot of money in film,
And integrity.
and it's good for children. All right,
Right.
beginning there.
If it's an authentic truth,
And I'm going now. There's a lot of money in film,
and integrity.
and it's good for children. All right,
Right.
beginning there.
If it's an authentic truth,
And I'm going now.
You have a grandstand seat here to one of the most momentous events in the history of science. In less than a minute, you will see the most powerful explosion ever witnessed by human eyes. The blast will come out of the horizon just about there. And this is the significance of the moment. This is the first full-scale test of a hydrogen device. If the reaction goes, we're in the thermonuclear era. For the sake of all of us, and for the sake of our country, I know that you join me in wishing this expedition well.
It is now 30 seconds to zero time. Put on goggles or turn away. Do not remove goggles or face burst until 10 seconds after the first light.
Minus 15 seconds. Minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, T0.
Work on high-yield hydrogen bombs had progressed from Operation Ivy, culminating in the spring of 1954 with Castle Bravo, the largest device ever detonated in atmospheric testing by the United States. Bravo was a hydrogen bomb using solid thermonuclear fuel, confirming the designs of Edward Teller and Stan Ulam, and paving the way to producing aircraft-deliverable hydrogen bombs and more effective weapons.
There's a lot of money in film,
And integrity.
and it's good for children. All right,
Right.
beginning there.
If it's an authentic truth,
And I'm going now.
significantly exceeding its expected yield by 2.5 times, Castle Bravo, with an explosive power of 15 megatons, stripped islands clean of vegetation and took the scientists by surprise. The huge explosion released large quantities of radioactive debris into the atmosphere. This resulted in the exposure and contamination of some servicemen, natives, and the crew of a Japanese fishing boat, which had gone unnoticed in the security zone around the blast. This incident pushed the dangers of fallout from nuclear weapons clearly into the public mind.
Cultural modus operandi. Every parent and child worldwide shall leave the motion picture theater knowing that they have seen much farther than Einstein ever expected, but nonetheless that they have seen Einstein's vision and beyond. Seen here is basal structure law 1. A. Pure gravitational unified field structure, which is Einstein's gravitational field treatment for the structure of the universe as a whole, as applied to an infinite hierarchy of galaxies. This law is a solution of Einstein's field equations of gravitation in a static, symmetric, pre-established infinite hierarchical state. This structure law 1 is, quote, infinitely certain, end quote, according to Andrea Clune of Georgetown, Washington, D.C. in the Wisconsin House at 2712 Massachusetts Avenue. Her motion, spirit and enthusiasm could be empirical proof that God exists and can't live in the terra firma of the human soul or amid the voidal nucleus of the brain of all living creatures.
Children who are in private school at one time, that's when the men get caught and go off into the management. I think it's been going on for generations.
Well, honest people are hard to find.
I don't think they are. It's just certain situations.
In the open, like your dad would have liked it.
Yes.
From the biography Settled is the Lord by Abraham Hayes, page 464. The universe as a whole in 1923. Does field theory offer possibilities for the solution of the quantum problem? In 1923, Einstein was 44 years old and continued to live in a finite island universe which was not a physical reality. In 6th grade, T.Krier recognized many other surrounding galaxies and examined the resultant gravitational field which permeated throughout his experience. Classroom, schoolyard, entire Earth shared by all men. In 8th grade he delivered his 10 Commandments retort to school principal Helen F. Stoner. By 44 years old, for Einstein, the reality of galaxies not recognized by Einstein would forever doom Einstein to failure. By 11 years old for T.Krier, the reality of galaxies recognized by T.Krier would complement Krier's attempts to unify matter and fields since 4 years old and make it easy to far exceed Einstein. For any doubts about that, contact Gross at capi.uxb.edu and Hartle at physics.uxb.edu. Event 3. Timothy in the summer of 1950 takes his usual evening walk with his father G.F. O'Boyle, and since O'Boyle moves quickly, he always reaches down to pick Timothy up and places him on his shoulders. From this vantage point, Timothy can describe to his father his new discoveries about the workings of nature at home, in the park, and as far as the beach and night sky of stars. On his father's shoulders, Timothy describes his theory of the size of objects which shine and the intensity of the light seen, which depends upon the distance from the source. For example, the street light as seen up close and at a distance. That description to his father, together with his request to go with his father and see the tennis court and then the baseball field and describe the sameness of hitting the ball with the bat or tennis racket, very much pleases his father, who then points out with his hands that the sun seen rising in the morning attracts the earth like the earth attracts the ball, which Timothy had pointed out. However, Timothy's dad is a poet and a sculptor, and goes on to elegantly describe the sun, earth, planet, solar system. Timothy's dad goes on to tell Timothy that he can see and feel the earth rotating, and Timothy's father describes with his hands both the rotation of the earth by itself and around the sun, and he tells Timothy that he can see these beautiful rotations when he goes to the beach in the morning with his mommy. As a matter of fact, it is every night as they walk that they together go to Dad's art studio, which is then his grandfather's auto paint and fender repair shop on Clark Street Avenue. Timmy's dad is a sculptor and has carved the body of a leopard out of wood and is using that as a mold with dried liquid plaster in which bronze metal is heated, melted to a liquid and poured in the leopard mold.
Would Albert Einstein plead for a vision that exhibits 1. Childlike curiosity, and 2. Exhibits the symmetry in nature, and 3. Is the culmination of a child's visual thinking, whose audiometric analog is, unequivocally, the prelude to also Sprach Zarathustra, and is in fact the uncontestable physical theory of e pluribus unum. Would Albert Einstein express himself with great passion on the question of the making of a motion picture for children worldwide?
Children to a private school at one time. That's when the men get caught in the middle of the middle management. I think it's been going on for generations.
Well, honest people are hard to find.
I don't think they are. It's just
good-foot shoulder. All right, beginning there.
It was an authentic truth.
And I'm going now. There's a lot of money in film, and it's good foot shoulder. All right, beginning there.
It was an authentic truth.
And I'm going now. There's a lot of money in film, and it's good foot shoulder. All right, beginning there.
It was an authentic truth.
And I'm going now. There's a lot of money in film, and it's good foot shoulder. All right, beginning there.
It was an authentic truth.
And I'm going now.
Cultural modus operandi. Every parent and child worldwide shall leave the motion picture theater knowing that they have seen much farther than Einstein ever expected, but nonetheless that they have seen Einstein's vision and beyond.
So I hope I've given you some flavor for the kinds of questions which we ask. But I want to convey something to you, that it's an extraordinarily remarkable fact. It's not a fact about me, it's a fact about the way human beings think, the way human beings, their cognitive abilities, that when you think about it for a moment, you know, a small, relatively small band of hairless apes has been able to deduce all of this, has been able to deduce such strange and totally unintuitive, very, very foreign ideas, very, very abstract ideas about the universe as peculiar and as unintuitive as the world is a hologram. I thank you.
It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the second of Lenny Suskind's 3 messenger lectures. Based on the number of people who stepped up to us and introduced themselves to Lenny and tell him how thrilled they are to meet him in person. Cornell's messenger lectures were established in 1924.
Oh, can I ask you to call me by my actual given name, Leonardo?
Leonardo de Susskind. By a gift from Dr. Hiram de Messenger, Dr. Hiram Messenger, a Cornell graduate of 1880 and a longtime teacher of mathematics. The terms of the original gift established, pay attention, a fund to provide a course of lectures on the evolution of civilization for the special purpose of raising the moral standard of our political, business, and social life. The terms of the original gift established, pay attention, a fund to provide a course of lectures on the evolution of civilization for the special purpose of raising the moral standard of our political, business, and social life. The terms of the original gift established, pay attention, a fund to provide a course of lectures on the evolution of civilization for the special purpose of raising the moral standard of our political, business, and social life.
It's also true in most other physics that the number of degrees of freedom that it takes to describe a region of space is proportional to its volume. We have found out by the series of indirect arguments that any region of space can be described by a collection of degrees of freedom which are no more numerous than the area of the region in Planck units. That led to a conjecture. It led to a conjecture that any region of space can be described by some kind of theory describing degrees of freedom on the boundary of the region of space. That is what was called the holographic principle. Holographic because it's like a hologram. That was a conjecture. It was a, you might even call it a speculation, which is worse than a conjecture. But it was in 1994 or so that this conjecture was put forward. Most people at the time thought it was a screwball notion. But it took a couple of years, basically until 1998, until a young Argentinian physicist whose name you should know. I asked people, do you know who Juan Maldacena is? I'm talking about physicists or physics groupies and so forth, and often they don't. Juan Maldacena is perhaps the greatest physicist of his generation. I won't tell you how old he is. He's younger than me, so he's not necessarily greater than me, but but he is certainly the greatest physicist, greatest theoretical physicist of his generation. I'm going to write his name. Maldacena. Mal stands for bad or something, but I don't know what is this? What does bad of, what is Sena? It's Italian, I think. Bad of Sena? Anyway, his first name is Juan. Juan Maldacena produced a perfectly rigorous description of this for a particular kind of space-time called anti-de Sitter space, but that's not what's important. What's important is he dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and found an extremely precise mathematical description of the degrees of freedom on the boundary which would describe a region of space. And indeed, it turned out that there were no more of them than one per Planck area on the region of space. So in some sense, the world is really described by a kind of holographic description on its own surface. Just to make it graphic, everything in this room, there is enough degrees of freedom on the walls of the room to describe everything in the room. It is as if the walls of the room could be thought of as a hologram describing what's happening in the interior. Okay, so we got through the holographic principle. Thank you. We have found out by the series of indirect arguments that perhaps the greatest physicist of his generation. I won't tell you how old he is. He's younger than me, so he's not necessarily greater than me, but but he is certainly the greatest physicist, greatest theoretical physicist of his generation. Found out by the series of indirect arguments certainly the greatest physicist, greatest theoretical physicist of his generation. But it took a couple of years, basically until 19. But it took a couple of years, basically until 19. But it took a couple of years, basically until 19. Not necessarily greater than me, but but he is certainly the greatest physicist, greatest theoretical physicist of his generation. Not necessarily greater than me, but but he is certainly the greatest physicist, the greatest theoretical physicist of his generation. Not necessarily greater than me, but but he is certainly the greatest physicist, the greatest theoretical physicist of his generation. Well, honestly, I don't feel like doing this. This is not something I'm going to enjoy. Why am I doing it? I've decided that I will make a little video and put it on my website. It's a rather popular website. Many people see it. And I am going to say something now that may make you uncomfortable. It makes me very uncomfortable. But here it is. I'm going to read it. Make no mistake, this is a grab by a clever, devious, and power-hungry man. It is a pooch. This may well be the most important target for our protests. Personally, it scares me more than anything else the Orange Godzilla has done. Please, don't ignore it, and please respond with action. Thank you. Make no mistake, this is a grab by a clever, devious, and power-hungry man. Power. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We have found out by the series of indirect arguments that
Supplement to Memoirs of a Child Prodigy, March 1, 2002. Subject: Kindergarten and First Grade, Brantano Elementary School. Force, Momentum, and Psychiatry. Event 4B. Timothy began kindergarten and first grade at Brantano Grammar School, Chicago, Illinois. Kindergarten was extraordinarily boring. However, arriving in first grade, Timothy was excited, energetic and very participatory in answering questions by the teacher to the class in general. Reading and arithmetic were exciting for Timothy, until the class arrived at the picture in the word book entitled Dick and Jane. The book had a page with drawings of Dick and Jane and Spot, their dog. Dick had a bat and was hitting a baseball which Spot was chasing while the ball was in flight after being hit by Dick with the bat. The words below the drawing read aloud in the class were "Go ball. Go. 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 Go Spot. Go Spot. Go. Go." Timothy was confused and inquired of the teacher, "How can you tell the ball to go?" Timothy emphasized to the teacher that, "You can't tell Spot to go and he will go. 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 But you cannot tell the ball to go, to make the ball go." The teacher would not reply, except to say that you could tell the ball to go. Timothy was shattered and disappointed, especially with someone he respected so much, that was then feeding him nonsense compared to the theory of baseball and tennis and the momentum of cars and trucks, which Timothy described to his father and grandfather in spring and summer of his 4th year. Timothy flat out abruptly quit participating in the class and volunteering answers to the teacher's questions. The teacher noticed and was sad. It turns out 44 years later that the quantum field theory of Brian Greene, David Gross, Ed Witten, Michio Kaku has messenger particles which far worse than the above violate and desecrate all of Newton and Einstein's laws of motion and common sense. Moreover, Richard P. Feynman in QED, Strange Theory of Light and Matter 1985, says that the laws of quantum field theory are counterintuitive and strange, and for the revelation, the above crackpots Greene, Gross, Kaku censor Feynman and his revelation QED, The Strange Theory of Light and Matter 1985. There will be no insanity in the film on the child's atomistic hierarchy and Einsteinian hierarchical cosmology and gravitation. There will only be common sense visual thinking a la T.Krier, Einstein, De Broglie and Yuan Cheng of China. In the film on the child's atomistic hierarchy there will be no quantum field theory or confusion of children with illusions and illusions that one can't tell a particle to come closer.
Children who are in private school and whatnot, that's when the men get caught in the middle of the management. I think it's been going on for generations.
Well, honest people are hard to find.